Most people, when they think of Noxus, think of one thing: conquest. And they're not wrong. Noxus is the most powerful empire on the continent of Valoran in the world of Runeterra. It has been expanding its borders for nearly 1,000 years. It has fought wars with Demacia, Ionia, the Freljord, Shurima, and dozens of smaller nations and city-states that most people have never heard of. Its armies march under a banner of red and black, and where those armies go, the old order tends to stop existing. From the outside, Noxus looks like a very simple thing: a hungry empire, a boot on the neck of the world. But Noxus is not a simple thing, and that, more than anything else, is what makes it one of the most fascinating places in the entire League of Legends universe. Here's the thing that surprises most people when they really look at Noxus: it's one of the most meritocratic societies in all of Runeterra. That word, meritocratic, means that what you achieve matters more than where you came from. Your bloodline doesn't determine your ceiling. Your family name doesn't open or close doors. What determines your position in Noxian society is what you can do, how strong you are, how clever, how useful, how capable of contributing to the Empire's strength in whatever form that takes. Because strength in Noxus doesn't only mean swinging a sword. A blacksmith who forges better armor than anyone else is strong. A merchant who outmaneuvers every competitor is strong. A healer who saves soldiers that would otherwise die is strong. A mage, an engineer, a spy, a commander, all of these are expressions of strength that Noxus recognizes and rewards. Anyone, from anywhere, of any background, can rise as high as their abilities will carry them, which is deeply at odds with the image the rest of Runeterra has of Noxus as a place of pure, barbaric brutality. The truth is more complicated, and therefore more interesting. The Noxian philosophy can be summarized in 3 principles: might, vision, and guile. These aren't just political slogans. They're the actual framework through which Noxus governs itself in the present day. Every citizen knows them, every soldier fights for them, every politician schemes within them. Might is the most obvious one. Physical strength, military power, the ability to take and hold ground. This is the face Noxus shows the world. Vision is subtler. The ability to see clearly, to understand the strategic picture, to know not just what is happening but why and what should happen next. Swain embodies this principle, and we'll spend a lot of time with him later. And guile, the art of getting what you need through intelligence, deception, patience, and manipulation. The ability to win without ever drawing a sword. The third seat of Noxus's ruling council is called the Faceless, its occupant unknown even to most of the Empire, and this anonymity is itself an expression of guile, fear what you cannot see. These 3 principles, combined, are how Noxus believes the world should work. And for nearly 1,000 years, they've been proving their point. Now, to understand how Noxus got here, how a collection of wandering tribes became the most powerful empire on the continent, we need to go back to the very beginning. And the very beginning of Noxus begins with a dead man who refused to stay dead, long before Noxus existed, long before Demacia was a kingdom, long before the nations of the present day had names. The continent of Valoran was in chaos. The Great Darken War had just ended. The Darken, ancient fallen warriors who had poured their souls into their weapons and become something no longer entirely human, had spent years laying waste to everything they touched. When that war finally ground to a halt, it left Runeterra devastated. Resources were scarce, communities were broken, and into that vacuum, as always happens, someone moved, a coven of sorcerers drawn together by ambition and the promise of power, made a decision that would change the course of history. They had found a way to reach across the boundary between the living world and whatever lies beyond it, and they had found something there, a soul, ancient, powerful, and furious. They called it back. What returned was not what they expected. The soul they summoned had been a conqueror in life, a mortal warlord of extraordinary ability who had once tried to build an empire spanning all of Runeterra. In death, he had found his faith in an afterlife rewarded with nothing. The paradise he believed in did not exist. There was only gray emptiness, and within it, rage. He could no longer be bound by his old name. He was something new now, something harder. The Noxians, who would eventually tell this story, called him Mordekaiser, the Iron Revenant, and when he returned to the world of the living, he killed the sorcerers who had summoned him immediately, not out of cruelty, simply because he had no more use for them. Mordekaiser's second period of existence was different from his first. He no longer cared about conquering the living world in the conventional sense. He had a new goal. He wanted to build a kingdom of the dead, a true afterlife, not the gray nothing he had experienced, but something real and permanent and entirely his own. To accomplish this, he needed power. Magical power specifically, the kind that came from understanding the deepest secrets of life and death. So he began to accumulate arcane knowledge the way other conquerors accumulate territory. He raised a fortress at the center of what would become the Noxian homeland, the Immortal Bastion, a vast, impossibly strong structure of dark stone filled with magical secrets, sitting at the heart of the continent like a dark star. He gathered those willing to serve him, built armies from the souls of the dead, and slowly, methodically, started constructing the foundation of his death kingdom, Shafti. Nomadic tribes of the region, the Noxi, found themselves living in Mordekaiser's shadow, raiding and surviving on the edges of his power. They hated him, they feared him, and they waited. The person who changed everything was not a warrior. She was a pale sorceress, and she was the most dangerous member of Mordekaiser's own inner circle. History would eventually know her as LeBlanc, though that name itself is likely a fiction, one of dozens of identities she has worn over the centuries. Her origins are completely obscured, even to those who have tried hardest to find them. What is known is that at some point, she became trusted enough to be near the center of Mordekaiser's power. And from that position of trust, she began to plan his destruction. Mordekaiser's greatest vulnerability was his connection to the Immortal Bastion itself, specifically to something within it called the Well of Souls, a reservoir of death magic that was the source of his nearly limitless power. At the right moment, cutting Mordekaiser at the right moment, cutting Mordekaiser off from the Well of Souls, his power faltered, and the Noxi tribes, watching for exactly this kind of opportunity, stormed the Immortal Bastion while he was weakened. They killed him, or they drove him from the physical world, which amounted to the same thing for the purposes of the living. Mordekaiser's soul returned to the gray emptiness, this time dragging with it every soul he had bound to his will during his second reign. His death, kingdom in progress, became his prison. The Noxi tribes stood inside the greatest fortress on the continent, and they realized something. They could stay. This is year 0 of the Noxian calendar. The moment the tribes stepped out of the Immortal Bastion after the wars were finished, looked at the devastated landscape around them, and made a collective decision. They were done being separate, done being raiders living at the edge of someone else's power. The world had been shattered by the Darken War and by Mordekaiser's reign, and if they were going to survive in it, they were going to need to build something. They called themselves Noxus. The Immortal Bastion became their capital. The philosophy of strength, earned, not inherited, became their creed. And almost immediately, the same problem presented itself that has driven every expansion in Noxian history since. The land around them was barren. The Darken War and Mordekaiser's reign had stripped the surrounding territory of nearly everything useful. To survive, Noxus had to expand. And so it did. Here's a secret that Noxus has been carrying since the very first day of its existence. LeBlanc didn't betray Mordekaiser out of idealism. She didn't do it because she wanted to free the Noxi tribes. She did it because she wanted the Immortal Bastion secrets for herself. When the tribes moved in, they found a fortress. LeBlanc found a library. And in that library were arcane secrets that had been accumulating since Mordekaiser's first age of conquest. Knowledge about life, death, magic, and the spaces between them that no one alive in Runeterra possessed. she founded the Black Rose. On the surface, the Black Rose is a secret society of mages, noble patrons, and influential figures operating within Noxian society. In reality, it is LeBlanc's personal instrument of power, a network of eyes, ears, and hands extending through every level of Noxian culture, steering the Empire toward outcomes she has decided upon, usually before anyone else knows there was a decision to be made. She has been doing this for nearly 1,000 years. Think about what that means. Every Emperor Noxus has had, and there have been many, has governed in the shadow of a woman who was already ancient when the Empire was founded. Every war, every political upheaval, every dynasty that rose and fell, LeBlanc has been watching, influencing, occasionally engineering. Not always overtly, not always in obvious ways. She is, after all, the embodiment of guile. Her stated goal, to the extent she has ever stated one, is to prepare Noxus for Mordekaiser's inevitable return. She knows, in a way that most people don't, that Mordekaiser is not gone. He is simply waiting. And when he finds a way back to the physical world, she intends to be ready for him. Whether that justifies everything she has done in the meantime is a question the lore deliberately leaves open. The Black Rose's most significant long-term manipulation was the most recent one, the reign of Borum Darkwill. Darkwill was Noxus's last emperor before the current system of government. He was a man of personal ambition but limited vision, not a bad commander in his youth, but as he aged, he became increasingly obsessed with a single goal: immortality. He did not want to die. He wanted to reign forever. And the Black Rose, sensing opportunity in his desperation, was right there to help. Under Darkwill's rule, Noxus launched an invasion of Ionia, the island nation to the east, known for its deep connection to magic and its philosophy of spiritual harmony. The official reason for the invasion was strategic value and resources. The real reason, driven by Black Rose influence, was that somewhere in Ionia might be the key to Darkwill's immortality. Magical artifacts, spiritual secrets, whatever it took. The Ionian invasion was, by Noxian standards, a catastrophe, and it was from that catastrophe that Noxus's current era was born. Noxus invaded Ionia expecting it to fall quickly. Ionia was not a military power in the conventional sense. It had no standing professional army, no warmisons or legions or siege corps. It had farmers and monks and artists and scholars and mages who mostly just wanted to be left alone. What Noxus discovered is that wanting very badly to be dragged on for years. The Ionian dragged on for years. The Ionian resistance, disorganized at first, then increasingly coordinated, proved far more difficult to crush than anyone had predicted. Villages that were supposed to be easy to hold became guerrilla warrens. Spiritual mages who had never fought a day in their lives turned out to be devastating in combat when they were fighting for their homes. The turning point was the Battle of the Placidium of Navori. Noxian General Jericho Swain, at this point still a rising military commander, not yet the visionary he would become, had captured the Placidium, an important spiritual site in Ionia's Navori province. It seemed like a victory. It wasn't. A young Ionian woman named Irlaia had watched her homeland invaded and her people killed. She took up the mantle of the Ionian resistance, gathering fighters and channeling a power she barely understood. At the Placidium, she led a counterattack that drove the Noxian forces back, and in the process, cut off Swain's arm. Swain was recalled to Noxus, disgraced by the failure, discharged from the army he had served his entire life. He disappeared from public view. But while he was gone from sight, he was not idle. Jericho Swain is one of the most interesting figures in all of Runeterra's lore. He is not a hero. He's not a villain in any simple sense. He's a man who sees further and more clearly than almost anyone alive, and who has decided that the clarity of his vision justifies the methods he uses to act on it. While wandering after his disgrace, Swain found something in the depths of the Immortal Bastion that no one else knew was there. A demon. Ancient, imprisoned, feeding on the secrets it had absorbed over centuries of proximity to Mordekaiser's arcane library. The demon's name was Raum, and Raum had spent an eternity watching Noxian emperors come and go and understanding, in the way only an immortal observer can, exactly how the empire worked and exactly where it was failing. Swain made a deal with Raum. He absorbed the demon's power into himself, gaining abilities that went beyond any conventional magic, the ability to see through the demon's vast experience and accumulated knowledge, and a restored arm in place of the one Irelia had taken. And in exchange, Raum got something it had always wanted, a body in the world, an agent with the will and intelligence to act. Swain returned to Noxus with a plan. Over years of careful preparation, he built alliances. He gathered support from people who shared his disgust at Darkwill's weak and self-serving rule. And on a single night, with the help of allies including Draven and the legendary General Dukuto, he walked into the capital and removed Darkwill from power permanently. The nobles who supported Darkwill and expected revenge were given death sentences. One who tried to flee the arena was cut down by Draven in front of a cheering crowd, which both demonstrated the new order's ruthlessness and, in purely Noxian terms, proved it deserved to be in charge. Swain did not make himself emperor. Instead, he created the Trifarix. The Trifarix is the current governing structure of Noxus, 3 leaders, each embodying one of the 3 principles of strength. Swain himself holds the seat of vision. He is the strategic mind, the long-term thinker, the person who understands not just what Noxus is doing, but what it should be doing 50 years from now. Darius holds the seat of might. He is the fist of the empire, the military commander whose personal strength is nearly unmatched and whose loyalty to what Noxus represents, rather than to any individual ruler, has survived every political upheaval the empire has experienced. And the third seat, the seat of guile, is held by the Faceless, an anonymous figure, whose identity is unknown to the public and even to many within the government. Some suspect it is LeBlanc. Swain denies this, and given that the Black Rose views Swain as an enemy to be eventually eliminated, it seems unlikely. But the mystery is itself a Noxian weapon. The Empire tells you there is a master of secrets watching from the shadows without telling you who or where. That is guile. The city of Noxus, Noxus Prime, is not a beautiful city in the way that Piltover is beautiful, or Ixaoken, or the Blessed Isles were before they were cursed. It is not designed to be admired. It is designed to endure. The Immortal Bastion sits at its heart, Mordekaiser's original fortress, now the seat of government and the symbolic center of the empire. Centuries of construction have built up around it, streets that twist and narrow deliberately, designed to frustrate any invading force that managed to breach the outer walls, flat crenellated rooftops functioning as secondary. Battlements. Districts layered on top of older districts, so that parts of the original city now lie underground, accessible only through gated passages that locals know and outsiders don't. The city is old in a way that is felt rather than seen. Walls that have been rebuilt 7 times still carry traces of the original stone. Streets that were once open plazas are now enclosed by centuries of construction on all sides. The Immortal Bastion itself has been raised and reconstructed in sections so many times that archaeologists aren't sure which parts date back to Mordekaiser's era and which parts are merely old. One of the most important cultural institutions in Noxus Prime is the Reckoning, the arena system. Reckonings are public combat events, structured fights in large arenas where fighters, known as Reckoners, demonstrate strength, skill, and courage before crowds of thousands. They can be organized between volunteers, between nobles settling disputes, between soldiers proving their worth, or between condemned criminals given the chance to earn their freedom. Crucially, reckonings are not universally to the death. This is a misconception that outsiders often carry. The most celebrated reckoners fight again and again over years, building reputations that transcend their victories. The crowd is as much a part of the institution as the fighters, Noxians take their reckoning seriously, with passionate followings for favorite fighters and complex social politics around which Reckoner represents which values. Draven turned the reckoning into his personal theater. He understood better than anyone that the crowd doesn't just want victory, they want spectacle. A beautiful kill, performed with style, is worth more to a reckoning crowd than a clean, efficient one. And Draven, with his spinning axes and his absolute confidence in his own brilliance, gave them spectacle on a scale no one had seen before. He became the most famous reckoner in the Empire's history. And he did it, characteristically, by making every fight about himself rather than about the fight. Outside the capital, the Noxian Empire is vast and varied. Conquered territories are governed by stewards, appointed officials who report to the Trifarix but have significant local authority. The Empire's approach to conquered people is complicated and often contradictory. On one hand, Noxus is genuinely more inclusive than most comparable empires in history. Conquered people can rise within the Empire's structure. A child born in a region that Noxus absorbed 3 generations ago is Noxian. Full stop. Their background is their background. It doesn't limit them. On the other hand, what those regions looked like before Noxus arrived matters very little to the Empire. Local cultures are tolerated where they are useful, dismissed where they are not. Some stewards are thoughtful administrators who try to integrate their territories with care. Others are purely extraction-focused, interested in what the land can provide and nothing else. This inconsistency is itself a Noxian truth. The Empire's meritocracy applies to individual people, not to cultures or traditions. What Noxus values is what individuals can do. What was there before Noxus arrived is, at best, a resource to be managed. Noxus has one of the largest champion rosters in the League of Legends universe, and more importantly, those champions collectively tell the story of the Empire from almost every possible angle. Generals and orphans, assassins and monsters, soldiers who believed, and soldiers who broke. Let's meet them. Darius, the Hand of Noxus. Darius didn't grow up in the Empire's elite. He grew up on the streets of Basilish, a port city that Noxus had conquered but not yet fully absorbed, as an orphan fighting for survival alongside his younger brother Draven. When a Noxian commander named Cyrus conquered Basilish, he saw something in the pair of them, not potential in a soft sense, raw, survivable steel. He inducted them into his war host, and Darius began the career that would eventually define him. He rose through every rank through exactly what Noxus claims to reward: merit. He was better than almost everyone he served with, and when he was better, he was promoted. And when he was promoted, he became better still. By the time he was a mature commander, he was known by a single word throughout the Empire: the Hand of Noxus. The instrument by which the Empire reaches out and reshapes the world. His personal weapon, the enormous axe he carries, is not just intimidating. In Noxian symbolic language, it represents the ability to cleave through whatever stands between Noxus and its goals. Darius has spent his career proving the symbol accurate. He is not cruel for the sake of cruelty. He is not interested in suffering as its own reward. What he is deeply committed to is Noxus, not the politics of Noxus, not the nobles of Noxus, not any specific emperor, but the idea of Noxus, the principle that strength is earned and that those who demonstrate it deserve to lead. When Swain created the Trifarix, Darius became might without hesitation, not because he was given the position, but because he recognized in Swain someone with a clarity of vision that Noxus genuinely needed. He follows Swain the same way he follows Noxus, not out of personal loyalty, but out of genuine belief that this is the right direction. That distinction between following a person and following a principle is probably the most important thing about Darius. Draven, the glorious executioner. Draven is Darius's younger brother, and on the surface, the contrast between them is almost comedic. Darius is all gravity and purpose. Draven is all chaos and self-satisfaction. But Draven is not a joke. He is, in his own way, a perfect expression of a certain kind of Noxian truth. That style is a form of power, that the crowd's love is real currency, and that someone who can consistently deliver what people want to see is valuable in ways that a purely functional fighter never is. He started as a soldier the same way Darius did. He was good at fighting, just as Darius was good at fighting. But where Darius found meaning and discipline in service, Draven found meaning in being watched. He wanted to be seen. He wanted the roar of a crowd responding to something he'd done. He found his calling in the reckonings. As a prison warden overseeing reckoning fights, he began participating himself, not because he was ordered to, but because he couldn't help it. He was better than the fighters, and more importantly, he understood better than the fighters that the arena is theater. He developed his signature style, the spinning axes, the theatrical entrances, the running commentary on his own brilliance delivered with complete conviction. The crowd went insane for him. Draven became famous in a way that only a handful of people in Noxian history had. Managed, famous in the same way that great athletes or performers are famous, where people who have never seen him fight know his name and have opinions about him. He turned his personality into power. He still fights in military campaigns when the mood takes him. He helped Swain during the coup against Darkwill. He is, when he chooses to be, genuinely dangerous in ways that go beyond performance. But primarily, Draven is a reminder that Noxus's meritocracy includes the merit of making people care about you. Swain, the grand strategist. We've already talked about Swain's story in broad strokes, but he deserves his own moment here, because Jericho Swain is genuinely one of the most fascinating characters in all of League of Legends lore. He is a man who has taken a demon into himself, not as a loss of control, not as a possession, but as a deliberate choice, and uses that demon's millennia of accumulated knowledge as a tactical resource. He consults it, argues with it, draws on its experience of watching Noxian history from the inside. And in doing so, he has become someone who sees the political landscape of Runeterra with a clarity that borders on supernatural. He is not kind. He is not warm. He doesn't inspire the kind of love that some leaders inspire. What he inspires is respect. The cold, uncomfortable respect you feel for someone who is clearly smarter than you and is clearly thinking several moves further ahead than everyone else in the room. His one obsession, beyond the health and direction of Noxus, is Mordekaiser. He knows the Iron Revenant will return eventually. He has been preparing for that return in ways that no one else even acknowledges as necessary, because most of Noxus is content to believe Mordekaiser is a legend rather than a threat waiting to re-emerge. Swain is not content to believe anything he hasn't verified. Katarina, the sinister blade. Katarina du Couteau is the daughter of one of the most powerful military families in Noxian history. Her father, General du Couteau, who helped Swain during the coup, was a demanding, exacting man who pushed Katarina from childhood into becoming the perfect weapon. She complied, not resentfully, but with the total commitment of someone who has decided that excellence is the only acceptable state. She trained constantly, not just in combat, but in the adjacent disciplines: poison, strategy, patience, reading people. Her father was hard to impress. She made impressing him the organizing principle of her early life. She became one of the finest assassins Noxus has ever produced. She is fast beyond what should be physically possible, efficient to a degree that feels almost philosophical. She doesn't waste movement, doesn't waste energy, doesn't waste anything. A Katarina assassination isn't dramatic. It's just over. Her relationship with her father is complicated. He vanished under mysterious circumstances, one of many loose threads in Noxian. Politics, and Katarina has been quietly, persistently investigating it ever since, in between her active service to the Empire. It's a rare expression of personal motivation in a woman who otherwise seems to exist purely as function. Her younger sister is Cassiopeia. They are very different people who came from the same place and made very different choices about what to do with it. Cassiopeia, the Serpent's Embrace. Cassiopeia was the younger du Couteau daughter, and where Katarina channeled her ambition through physical mastery, Cassiopeia went another direction. Political intelligence. She was brilliant at reading people, at understanding what they wanted and how to use it, at navigating the complex social terrain of Noxian noble politics. The Black Rose noticed her potential. And in Shurima, where she had been sent as part of a diplomatic mission, she found a tomb. An ancient Shuriman tomb with serpentine protections that had been waiting for thousands of years. She went inside anyway, because curiosity and ambition together are a dangerous combination, and Cassiopeia had both in abundance. The curse took her. She emerged from the tomb transformed, her lower body replaced by a serpentine form, her nature fundamentally altered. She can now project petrifying venom, move with a speed and fluidity that no human body can match, and wields poison as naturally as she once wielded conversation. She is still herself. That's the part that makes her interesting. She didn't lose her mind or her intelligence or her ambition. She adapted. The form changed. The woman inside it is recognizably the same person who walked into that tomb, just with different tools and a rather significant grudge against whoever designed those traps. Riven. The exile Riven story is one of the most emotionally resonant in all of Noxian lore, because it is about what happens when someone believes completely in something, and then that something betrays them in the worst. Matters. That what you do matters more matters. That what you do matters more than where you came from. That there is honor in serving something larger than yourself. She enlisted, she excelled, and she was given command of a small unit. Then, Noxus invaded Ionia, and someone in the Noxian military, someone Riven believed was on her side, armed her unit with a weapon she didn't fully understand. A chemical weapon developed by a man named Singed. During a battle it was deployed, and it killed her entire unit. Noxian soldiers, killed by Noxian weapons, in a war that Riven had believed was being fought with honor. She broke her sword. Not as a dramatic gesture, she broke it because she couldn't hold it anymore. Because the thing she had believed in had turned out to be something she didn't recognize, and she didn't know what to do with the part of herself that had been built entirely around that belief. She became an exile, wandering, trying to figure out who she is without the thing that defined her. Her shattered sword, pieces of blade that she still carries, still fights with, is one of the most powerful symbols in League of Legends lore. It's the remains of something that mattered, carried because throwing it away entirely isn't something she's ready to do. Riven isn't a villain. She's someone trying to figure out if she still believes in anything, after the thing she believed in turned out to be complicated. Talon, the Blade's shadow. Talon was a street child, a thief and a survivor in the underground of Noxus's cities. He had a talent for violence that was raw and instinctive, not trained, not disciplined. He killed a man who attacked him at a young age in a way that drew attention from General Dukuto, who recognized in that violence something that could be shaped. Dukuto adopted him. Not exactly into the family. Talon isn't a Dukuto by blood or legal recognition, but into service, into training, into the deep craft of assassination that the Dukuto family had been perfecting for generations. He became, eventually, the best. Better than Katarina in raw potential, though they are different kinds of fighters. Talon is quieter, darker, less interested in the social dimensions of Noxian life, and more interested in the work itself. He doesn't fight for the Empire in any abstract sense. He fights for Dukuto, and for the mystery of what happened to the man who shaped him. He and Katarina are searching for the same thing, more or less, and finding the answer, whatever it is, will likely change both of them. Vladimir, the Crimson Reaper. Vladimir is ancient, genuinely ancient. His exact age is unclear, but estimates range from over 1,000 years old, placing his birth somewhere in the early period of Noxian history, possibly even before it. He practices hemomancy, the magic of blood, which he uses to sustain his own life indefinitely while drawing on the vitality of others. He is affiliated with the Black Rose, and LeBlanc has cultivated him as an asset for centuries. Vladimir's blood magic is uniquely useful for certain things the Black Rose needs done, including, most significantly, his role in the resurrection of Sion. He is not a soldier. He is barely a citizen in any meaningful sense. He exists within Noxian society the way a very old, very powerful predator might coexist with a city. Present, occasionally useful, ultimately not bound by the same rules as everyone else. He will outlast Swain and Darius and the Trifarix. He has outlasted empires before. Noxus is, to him, simply the current arrangement of things. His relationship with LeBlanc is complex. He serves her interests when they align with his own, and he distrusts her at the same level she distrusts everyone. Two immortals who have been navigating each other for centuries, each perpetually calculating whether the other is more useful as an ally or a threat. LeBlanc, the Pale Sorceress. We have discussed LeBlanc throughout this video because her influence runs through all of Noxian history. But a few things specifically about her are worth dwelling on. She is a shapeshifter, not in the way Nico is, through natural mystical ability, but through mastery of illusion magic so deep that she can maintain false forms indefinitely, can create duplicates of herself indistinguishable from the original, and has quite possibly been presenting different faces to the world for so long that even she has lost track of which one started as real. She founded the Black Rose originally to pursue Mordekaiser's arcane secrets and prepare for his return. Over centuries, it has become her entire civilization, a secret civilization that runs parallel to Noxus, hidden within it, shaping it. Every emperor and now every Trifarix member governs within a context that LeBlanc has at least partially constructed. She doesn't want to rule Noxus openly. Open rule requires accountability, and accountability is a weakness. What she wants is what she has always had, the ability to shape outcomes without being visible, to pull strings from behind a curtain that no one can quite confirm exists. She is, in her way, the truest expression of Noxian guile that has ever existed. Mordekaiser, the Iron Revenant. And then there's the shadow behind all of it. Mordekaiser is not currently in the world. He is in his own constructed afterlife realm, the one he finally succeeded in building after his second death, surrounded by the souls he has collected over 2 lifetimes of conquest. He rules there as an emperor of the dead, still expanding his domain, still accumulating power. But Mordekaiser is patient in a way that only the truly ancient can be. He does not rage against his imprisonment the way lesser souls might. He waits. He plans. He has been learning in the afterlife things about death and power that no living creature has had access to. He will return. The question of when is the only thing in Noxian politics that Swain thinks about more than anything else. And when it happens, it will not be the return of something defeated. It will be the return of something that has had centuries to prepare. Sion, the undead juggernaut. Sion was a Noxian warlord from the ancient era, not Mordekaiser's time, but the early period of the empire when Noxus was establishing itself against Demacia. He was a giant of a man, impossibly strong, defined by a single ambition, to bring Demacia low. His most famous moment was not a victory in a conventional sense. He fought through wave after wave of Demacian forces at the gates of their capital, took wounds that would have killed any normal man 3 times over, and died strangling the Demacian king to death with his bare hands. Noxus made him a legend. The story of Sion is told to every Noxian child, not as a tragedy, but as proof. Proof that what Noxus believes is true, that those who earn their place through strength are worthy, and that death itself is not a sufficient reason to stop fighting. Centuries later, Vladimir resurrected him. Using blood magic and the sacrificed lives of Noxian soldiers, he was brought back, not as himself, but as a colossal undead weapon, a body without a complete mind, driven by war instinct and barely contained violent energy. Sion doesn't think in the present, he fights. When he can be aimed, he's the most destructive physical force in the Noxian arsenal. When he can't be aimed, he's a problem. The Noxian military considers this an acceptable trade-off. The Noxian Empire, in the current lore, is at a genuine crossroads. Swain's Trifarix represents a real break from the old way of doing things. The emperors who came before, including Darkwill, who was essentially a Black Rose puppet, governed for Personal benefit and private obsession. Swain governs for the Empire as a concept, which is both more admirable and more dangerous, because someone who believes completely in the justice of what they're doing is much harder to stop than someone merely selfish. Noxus's borders are still expanding. Ionia remains a wound in the Empire's pride. Some territories still occupied, the war never quite fully resolved, the memory of the atrocities committed under Darkwill a festering complication. Swain ended the worst of it and pulled back some forces, but some is not all, and Ionia has not forgotten. Demacia remains the ancient rival, the counterpart that Noxus measures itself against, the opponent that has shaped Noxian identity as much as any internal development. The war with Demacia has never truly ended. It simply pauses sometimes. And somewhere deep beneath the Immortal Bastion, in a realm of gray and shadow, the Iron Revenant is waiting. Noxus asks a question that doesn't have a comfortable answer. What if the frightening thing is also, in some ways, right? Because Noxus is frightening. Its expansionism has caused tremendous suffering. Its philosophy of strength, taken to its logical extreme, is brutal and unforgiving. The people it conquers don't always get a vote on whether they want to be conquered, regardless of how inclusive the Empire becomes afterward. But the philosophy itself, that anyone can rise, that what you do matters more than who you were born as, that strength takes many forms and all of them deserve respect, is not obviously wrong. It is, in some ways, more honest about how the world actually works than the polished idealism of empires that believe they are purely good. Noxus is the empire that looks you in the eye and tells you exactly what it is. And somehow, that honesty makes it more unsettling, not less. The champions who emerged from it, Darius, Swain, Katarina, Draven, Riven, Talon, Vladimir, Cassiopeia, LeBlanc, Sion, Mordekaiser, each carry a piece of that question. What does strength actually mean? What is it worth? What do you become when you build your entire life around it? The answers are different for every one of them, and that's why Noxus, 1,000 years into its history and still expanding, is still one of the most compelling stories being told in any game universe anywhere. The Empire endures. Thank you for spending this time with Noxus. If you want to go deeper, the short stories Trifarian Solution, The Principles of Strength, and Blood of Noxus are all excellent starting points. Swain's and Darius's individual lore pages on the League of Legends Universe site are among the most detailed in the entire game. More regions are coming. Until then, rest well.